Hi, this is Jim from Safety Wars. Before we start the program, I want to make sure everyone understands that we often talk about OSHA and EPA citations, along with some other regulatory actions from other agencies, legal cases, and criminal activity. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Proposed fines are exactly that, and they are often litigated, reduced, or vacated. We use available public records, news accounts, and press releases. We cannot warranty or guarantee the details of any of the stories we share, since we are not directly involved with these stories, at least not most of the time. Enjoy the show.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Hello. So, I can't believe June is over. The Safety Wars from an undisclosed location in OSHA Region 3. The Safety Wars for Tuesday, June 30th, 2026. Glad to be here. Sorry about last week. I don't know what happened with the video. It was horrible. So we went to audio, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to shoot that all over again. Jay Allen and I were talking. I got to shoot that all over again because I think it's important on that whole Roundup situation, Monsanto Company versus Darnell. So I have it here. We're going to go right straight out with it. Again, commentary you're not really going to hear anywhere else. You're going to hear here. And a lot of Supreme Court cases out today, and we'll talk about them briefly. Some controversial, some not so controversial. Some for one side, some for the other side. But what's important is this week is America's 250th anniversary. I'm going to be wearing my patriotic Safety Wars and other jerseys this week. We even entered at one of the organizations I work with, we even entered a patriotic cubicle contest, and we won. So can't really tell you what organization that is. That's we'll just say we have many what do you call it, non-disclosure agreements with them, NDAs. Anyway, so this is from last week. So today on Safety Wars, we're talking about a major Supreme Court decision involving Roundup, cancer warnings, and the power of federal labeling law. The case is Monsanto Company versus Darnell, decided on June 25th, 2026. That was last Thursday. John Darnell sued Monsanto in Missouri, claiming he used Roundup for about 20 years and later developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. His key claim was failure to warn. He argued Monsanto should have placed a cancer warning on Roundup's label. A Missouri jury agreed with him and awarded him with more than $1 million. But what happened? The Supreme Court reversed all these decisions. The central issue is not whether glyphosate causes cancer. That has been what a lot of the news reports have been talking about, where the Supreme Court said, glyphosate doesn't cause cancer. That sounds great, but that's not what the ruling was. And we're here to tell you that you're being manipulated, as usual, and we are here to help educate, not manipulate. The issue was whether Missouri law could require Monsanto to add a cancer warning when the EPA had repeatedly approved Roundup labels without one. Under FIFRA, the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, pesticide labels must be approved by the EPA. Once the EPA approves the label, the manufacturer must use that label unless the EPA approves or requires a change. FIFRA also says, now this is the whole thing, states may not impose labeling requirements that are, quote, in addition to or different from, end quote, federal requirements. The court had Darnell's failure to warn claim would effectively require Monsanto to add a cancer warning. Because EPA had not required that warning, Missouri tort law would be imposing a different labeling requirement. That, the court said, is expressly preempted by federal law. Justice Kavanaugh wrote the opinion, joined by Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Barrett. Justice Thomas also concurred. Justice Jackson dissented, joined by Justice Gorsuch. The takeaway is huge. When a federal agency specifically approves a product label, state lawsuits may not be able to enforce a different warning. For companies, this strengthens federal uniformity. For plaintiffs, it narrows one path for failure to warn claims involving EPA-approved pesticide labels. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, joined by Justice Neil Gorsuch, argued that Congress never intended FIFRA to give pesticide manufacturers blanket immunity from state failure to warn lawsuits simply because EPA approved the label. The dissent emphasized that EPA registration is not the same thing as Congress creating an absolute federal rule that wipes out state tort law. In Justice Jackson's view, FIFRA establishes minimum national labeling standards, but it does not prevent states from allowing injured people to seek compensation when they believe a manufacturer should have provided stronger warnings. She pointed to the language in FIFRA stating that EPA registration should not be construed as a defense. To the dissent, that language demonstrates Congress expected manufacturers could still face legal challenges even after EPA approved the product labels. The dissent also questioned whether EPA's repeated conclusions about glyphosate should automatically override the traditional role of state juries. Scientific understanding evolves, agencies can change their positions, and juries have historically played an important role in determining whether a company acted reasonably based on all the evidence presented in court. Justice Jackson warned that the majority's decision dramatically expands federal preemption beyond what Congress actually wrote. The practical result, she argued, is that people allegedly injured by federally regulated products may lose an important avenue for holding manufacturers accountable, even when a jury concludes initial warnings were warranted. The broader debate is not about Roundup, it's about federalism. Who gets the final say over product safety warnings? The federal government alone, or can state courts and juries still play a role? My question is this: how does California's Prop 65 fit into this whole thing? The dissent, and that's a law that requires additional labeling on things. This dissent answered that Congress intended both systems to coexist, the majority disagreed. Now, this is our thing here, right? Regulatory compliance and civil liability are not the same, but sometimes Congress makes compliance the finish line. This decision is a reminder that juries don't always get the last word when Congress clearly occupies the field. For years, we've heard just let the juries decide. The Supreme Court answered this time, not if Congress already did. Or put another way, you can't sue your way into rewriting EPA-approved label simply because 12 people in Missouri disagreed with Washington's paperwork. I don't know. What's my prediction on here? This is going to have effects well beyond Roundup, right? The case highlights the tension that safety professionals see almost every day. We hear comply with the regulation, then in civil court, compliance is only the minimal standard. Let's see what else. Let's just go. We're at almost 15 minutes after the hour. We're just going to go into FSN radio news, and hopefully I cleared up the echo.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. The United States Supreme Court has struck down US President Donald Trump's executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship, ruling 6-3 that the Constitution guarantees automatic citizenship to virtually all children born on American soil. Kate Fisher is outside the Supreme Court in Washington and sent us this report.
This was kind of Donald Trump's signature policy. It's something he's campaigned on throughout his political career, and he made this executive order on the first day of his second term in office. Now we are at the final decision by the Supreme Court, and they have rejected his challenge to the right to immediate citizenship to babies born here on American soil by 6 justices to 3.
Qatar says US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Doha, but that no direct meeting with Iranian officials is currently scheduled, contradicting US President Donald Trump, who said on Monday that Tehran had requested face-to-face talks. The Qatari foreign minister says the American envoys will instead hold indirect discussions with the aim of fleshing out the details of a ceasefire agreed almost 2 weeks ago. Sir Keir Starmer says the UK has to be prepared for war to be able to deter potential enemies. The outgoing Prime Minister set out a £15 billion boost for defence spending, but acknowledged some road and energy projects would have to be scrapped to pay for it. The plan will see ageing naval destroyers replaced by cheaper ships, as well as a fleet of unmanned drone vessels. Critics say the government isn't spending enough on defence and more needs to be done to modernise the UK's armed forces. But the Prime Minister's confident his plan will keep the country safe.
The increase in defence spending that we put in place, announced last year, already in place, which was the single biggest sustained increase since the 1980s, and the fact that this defence investment plan builds on that. And it's not just the amount of money, it is also the capabilities. We've learnt a lot from Ukraine, actually also from Iran as well, about the capability that is needed in order to confront countries like Russia. That is exactly what's going on in Ukraine. So I am confident in that. I'm also confident because we're working more closely with our European allies on this. One of the arguments I've made repeatedly over the last 2 years is that European countries need to do more.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, with more today on the crisis in Venezuela following last week's twin earthquakes, as Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez creates a commission to assess damage to housing and infrastructure. She is also coming under relentless criticism by members of the public. Residents in the worst-hit areas say they have been left largely to fend for themselves. And at one point, President Rodriguez was barracked as she visited La Guaira on the outskirts of Caracas, which served as the quake's epicenter. Reporter Catherine Ellis is in the Venezuelan capital.
A lot of people are actually just using their bare hands or spades to try and get to people that they know that are still trapped underneath, basically. If anything, I think the situation could get worse. People are getting more angry. Some people today were saying, we're hungry, we haven't got food, we're looking for people, using our hands looking for people. We haven't got food, we haven't got equipment, we haven't got helmets, we haven't got anything. Where is the government? Now, the government can't solve everything. This is a massive natural disaster, but people are at least expecting some answers and some support. So tensions could actually rise a lot more rather than trust rising.
And she says Venezuelans say they are bypassing official channels entirely, preferring to deliver donations directly to affected families rather than hand them over to the authorities. President Trump has deployed Marines to assist in the search, rescue and recovery operations. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main headlines again. The United States Supreme Court has struck down US President Donald Trump's executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship. Qatar says US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Doha, but that no direct meeting with Iranian officials is currently scheduled. And British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says the UK has to be prepared for war to be able to deter potential enemies. And that is the latest from Feature Story News. I'm Jagruti Dave in Washington.
Thank you, Feature Story News. And let's see. Pardon me. Let's see what else is going on here.
You are listening to Safety Wars. Tomorrow's Safety Today.
All right, so a lot of stuff going on out there in the news here. Some safety related, some not safety related, but we're going to go over all of it. Again, it's what's interesting to me. Now, this is starting to happen in New Jersey, but it's already been happening. My understanding is in California. They're with a statewide ban on leaf blowers. Pardon me here. Judge rejects preemption challenge to town's leaf blower ban. A federal judge that has ruled that the Federal Clean Air Act does not preempt Montclair, New Jersey municipal ordinance banning gasoline-powered leaf blowers. The ruling is believed to be the first in the nation to address a challenge of this type, said Derek R. Frymogel, I guess, of Riker Danzig. Yeah, it's a German Frymogel, right? In Morristown, New Jersey, who led the team representing Montclair. By upholding the ordinance, the court has provided important legal validation that other jurisdictions now point to consider adopting similar measurements. Numerous local governments nationwide have enacted restrictions on gas-powered leaf blowers, citing air pollution and their high decibel levels. So they're running. I broke out the DB app on the iPhone. And my leaf blower runs at about 98 decibels. I have two of them that are gas powered, and they're like 98 to 101. So, you're wearing hearing protection with those if you live in my house with that. So, however, I don't think it's so much the high decibel levels that get to people. I think it's more the annoying sound that they make. And for me, I'd rather listen to a gas engine than an electric motor any day for a leaf blower. I mean, I can't stand the electric leaf blowers. They're horrible. Now, what a lot of the other states are talking about are, like California, just not only leaf blowers, but a lot of other equipment. So I don't know how that's going to work here with that. Now, especially with the climate change changing climate change policies here. This is from last week, last Friday. U.S. Department of Labor, I think it was Friday. Yeah, last Friday. U.S. Department of Labor proposes $3.5 million in fines for dangerous health and safety violations by 3 employers during Houston facility chemical response. The U.S. Department of Labor has proposed more than $3.5 million in fines. And let's remember, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, and these things may get vacated, revised, enforced, what have you. $3.5 million in fines against 3 companies after federal inspectors determined they failed to protect workers during post-emergency response cleanup after a chemical spill at the BWC Terminals Industrial Facility in Channelview, Texas. The department's OSHA initiated 3 inspections after December 27, 2025 sulfuric acid spill that led to multiple employee injuries. By the way, let me share this, right? It is a federal press release. So, OSHA found that despite safety warnings, BWC terminals mixed fresh and spent sulfuric acid, triggering a tank pressurization that ruptured a supply line, releasing $1 million in sulfuric acid, resulting in multiple employee injuries. Now, I'm not a chemical engineer, but often sulfuric acid is one of the most common industrial chemicals in the United States, and it is an oxidizer. So I'm going to speculate a little bit here. This is one for more the CSB than Safety Wars, is when you have sulfuric acid and it is contaminated, it's oxidizing something. Like if you're dealing with a metal or something organic, and you add more sulfuric acid to it, it may oxidize more, causing a tank overpressurization. That's my understanding of chemistry on this one. I know sulfuric acid, there are videos out there. What happens when you mix sulfuric acid and ground metals, ground organics like wood, things of that nature. That's why a lot of times sulfuric metal ladders, people think, well, metal ladders, no electrocution hazard. Yes, that's true. But also what happens is you have reactions with sulfuric acid that may be dangerous with that. So following the chemical spill, BWC Terminals contracted Coastal Environmental Solutions to handle hazardous waste cleanup, and Coastal Environmental Solutions hired subcontractor of One-Way Environmental Services to provide laborers for the cleanup and remediation process. Despite having, and this is a quote from Assistant Secretary for Occupational Health and Safety, David Keeling. Despite having full knowledge of the severe hazards involved in the spill and cleanup process, these three employers chose to bypass OSHA requirements and put their workers at serious risk. Their joint failure to protect workers was not an oversight. It was a choice that resulted in preventable employee injuries and environmental impacts. We will not hesitate to hold employers accountable when they ignore federal laws that are in place to protect workers' health, safety, and health. OSHA investigators cited One-Way Environmental Services, LLC, for 18 willful, egregious, and 5 serious violations after investigators found the employer sent workers to clean up the chemical spill without adequate training, respirator fit tests, or safety measures. I don't know what those were. They don't release the actual citation anymore. OSHA proposed $3 million plus in penalties. Coastal Environmental Solutions faces $392,000 plus in proposed penalties for 2 willful and 5 serious violations that include a lack of training, a safety and health program, an emergency response plan for hazardous waste operations and emergency response, and deficiencies related to the use of respirators. And I'm going to point out, you can have all of those things if you give us a call at 845-269-5772 or jim@safetywars.com. Right? I write these plans all the time here for these facilities. Coastal Environmental Solutions faces 3 BWC Terminals was cited with 6 serious violations for exposing workers to chemical burns, failing to provide hazmat training, and deficiencies relating to the use of respirators. OSHA proposed $882,750 in penalty, so a total of $3.5 million plus. Now, this is a multi-employer job site, obviously, and every employer here had different roles, right? Simply put. So in this case, what you see is what we see here is the OSHA going after all 3 employers here. And I don't want to say going after being necessarily a bad thing, but all 3 employers had a role to play according to OSHA here. Okay, this is on an announcement from OSHA. Might want to look into this. If it's free, if it's for me. U.S. Department of Labor to host free 3-day virtual training on workers' safety and health for federal agencies August 4th through 6th. The U.S. Department of Labor's OSHA will host a free 3-day virtual training event August 4th to 6th to help federal agencies, safety and health personnel strengthen protections for federal workers. Presented by the OSHA Training Institute in collaboration with the agency's Office of Federal Agency Programs, the series will feature half-day seminars on key topics, including OSHA inspection, workplace violence, control of hazardous energy, combustible dust and recognition and control, fall protection, construction focus 4, road closure and excavation overview, office ergonomics, heat stress, lead awareness, and managing an effective safety program. The event, unfortunately, is only open to federal agencies. And the registration is now. So let me see. Click attendees must self-register, and they give you a and again, this is only open for federal employees, unfortunately. And that's like a 10-hour class there. No, with all the stuff going on there. So I don't know. I would think you could get a Freedom of Information Act request and make it for that if you're really that interested. Okay, we are back. There's a lot of people who like to call during the program and know that I'm on the air. Go figure. Bizarre. All right, we're going to head on over to EPA news. All right, and let's see here. EPA to host open house for vernal pool pilot study and public input opportunity at the Pittsfield / Housatonic River Superfund site. Way back in the day, I spent a couple of days here doing some sampling. We're talking in excess of 20 years ago, closer to 30 years ago, which is friggin' scary here. U.S. EPA will hold an open house on July 28th, 2026 in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, answer questions regarding General Electric Company's vernal pool pilot study at their recently submitted vernal pool pilot study supplemental information package. To ensure the vernal pool pilot study work can begin this year, review of certain site preparation activities such as mobilization and temporary road construction must be expedited. This information is provided in Section 3 of the Vernal Pool Pilot Study Supplemental Information Package. All right, so you can go through there. It's over at the GE Pittsfield / Housatonic Site Vernal Pool Pilot Study Open House. Okay, July 28th. Berkshire Athenaeum, 1 Wendell Avenue in Pittsfield. So, beginning in the early 1900s, GE operated a large-scale industrial facility, including the manufacture and servicing of power transformers, defense and aerospace, and plastics, and used numerous industrial chemicals at its Pittsfield facility. From 1932 through 77, GE manufactured serviced electrical transformers containing PCBs, as polychlorinated biphenyls. Years of PCB and other industrial chemical use and improper disposal led to extensive contamination around Pittsfield, Massachusetts, as well as down the Housatonic River. And now that eventually the water makes it through Connecticut into Long Island Sound. And, going on and on and on. It's pretty, from what I recall, was a very interesting site. EPA to host a roundtable on paraquat this summer. Agency to convene scientists, experts, and advocates to examine safety questions, solutions, and alternatives. U.S. EPA today announced it will host a roundtable on the herbicide paraquat this summer, convening scientists, subject matter experts, farm worker and community advocates, and other stakeholders to discuss the documented safety challenges associated with the chemical, examine the latest science, and explore potential solutions and alternatives. Additional details, including the date, location, format, and information on how to participate, are forthcoming and will be announced in the coming weeks, so we'll keep an eye on that. EPA releases quarterly update on the implementation of 100% solution to permanently end the Tijuana River sewage crisis. U.S. EPA released its second quarterly public update for 2026 detailing the implementation of two historic agreements signed with Mexico in 2025 to permanently end the years-long Tijuana River sewage crisis. The Trump administration has been working at a relentless pace to bring relief to the people of San Diego, who for decades have been inundated with sewage from Mexico via the Tijuana River channel and the coast. Right? So it's going on and on and on. This is from the United States Census. And again, we talk about demography here because demography is extremely important here. And we're finding out, even with the, even with these Supreme Court cases here, that came out. One of the arguments on the naturalized citizenship, birthright citizenship one, is the I just lost. Right. One of the things is demography. And demographics. So we have a very big interest in looking at demography. I just lost my place here where I was going to do our next story here. So we'll catch up during commercial break here. Now, it's a big thing. So here we have all age groups in the South grew faster than, this is from last week, faster than any other region from 20 to 2025, primarily fueled by outlying metro counties, according to new vintage 2025 estimates released today by the U.S. Census Bureau. This is from last week. Many counties across the country saw slower growth in the past year, but those in the South were less affected. In fact, the region has had most of the nation's fastest growth counties ever since the year 2020. New data released today for all counties in the U.S. and Puerto Rico provide a closer look at what age groups are driving the growth in the U.S. counties across different stages of life. And they list them. Regional age patterns are changing for a few key reasons. The continued transition of baby boomers into retirement age, compounded by local migration and fertility patterns, the shifting demographic makeup of the country. The South stands out because it's seeing population gains in groups that in other regions saw little change or are declining. And here is where we're at here. So we have nationally, right, percent change of population. So under 18, we have a negative population here, right, except for the South. Over here in 18 to 24, we have, don't ask me what happened with the screen there, 18 to 24, we have a decline in the Northeast and growing everywhere else, especially in the South. 25 to 44-year-olds, they're growing across the nation. 45 to 64 years old, they're growing by 0.1% in the South and sinking the rest of the nation. I don't know what the deal is there with that. Right? I guess they're moving to the Midwest, is what it looks like. Or 65 and older, they're growing. That's that baby boomer thing going on there. So what does this mean here? We have in ecology what's called the population pyramid, and that basically dictates everything. So if your population is growing, your economy is growing, things are nice. When you have a disruption, then things start to go kaplooey, and with that, and you have stress put into the system. The question always was, is the system set up, and that we're talking the economic system primarily, and political system, is it set up to be resilient enough to manage that, right? Very hoppy here, right? Human organizational performance. Is there resilience? Is there capacity? Will there be problems, but not really without consequences? And when you look at this whole thing, you had the baby boomers, which was likely the largest, I'm always told it's the largest group of people out there are the baby boomers. And that shows what that is here, right? Right behind it, where I'm at, Gen X's, that was the smallest generation there was here. And with that, and now they're talking the under 18-year-olds being the smallest generation. Here, birth rates, low birth rates. Now, Margaret Atwood, in her two novels, Testaments, and the other one was the original Handmaid's Tale, touched upon, and I think it was inadvertent, with all due respect to her. Everybody always talks about, the Handmaid's Tale, and, how they treat women, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. But it's more of a tale for me as to what happens when the demographic collapse. Things go kaplooey. Things go bad. And I think with this whole birthright citizenship thing, regardless of your opinion on it, we're not getting rid of immigration in this country. things will change and everything else, because right now, immigration is all that we have going for us and growing the economy for us to be more competitive. Other countries, not so much. Look at what's going on in Russia. One of the reasons why we have the war in Ukraine is that Russia and how they fight their wars by throwing bodies at things rather than technology and bombs and everything. Their way of doing it is throw people at a situation. Well, guess what? When you don't have enough people, what happens? You're going to have a problem, or you're going to go nuclear. As Finland has identified on that. Same thing in West and Europe in general. You have demographic displacement with people right there. Yeah, no, they're always going to bring in people. Doesn't matter where it is, because they need to grow their economy and maintain their economy and their systems. Going to happen, right? Unless you're in a place where they don't care about economies, or they're going to promote high child birth rates. Good luck with that one. I don't see that happening. Gone, and I'm going to offend some people here, gone are the days of barefoot and pregnant. Sorry, that's how our mothers were brought up. If you're a Gen Xer, oftentimes was that. Especially if you have older parents as a Gen Xer like I did. That's not going to fly. Sorry, you're not going to have women nowadays are not going to be baby factories. Not going to happen. So you're going to have immigration. There, I said it. Oh, by the way, you're going to be offended by a lot of the other stuff I talk about in the very near future here. So, again, that's all part of the safety war. It's not called national security. It's called how our society is managed. With that, if you don't have people coming in, I'm not talking race, I'm not talking religion, if you don't have absolute numbers, you're going to have a problem. There's going to be a problem. Just the way it is. All right. Here we have a terrorist attack in Monaco. When was this? Yesterday, I believe it was. So for Vladimir Yermolayev, the sun-drenched French Riviera was supposed to be a refuge from danger. The Ukrainian tycoon swapped his war-torn homeland for a lavish residence in Monaco's La Russa district, a quiet enclave coveted by ultra-wealthy, overlooking the glittering Mediterranean Sea and its leisurely promenades. Sanctioned by Kiev for allegedly selling wine in Russia-occupied Crimea, the magnate was seeking low taxes and international protection. He hoped to continue living a life of luxury in the Côte d'Azur while his compatriots weathered the Russian bombardment at home. But as he strolled through the lobby on Monday night, a booby-trapped backpack exploded in the doorway, sending a storm of bolts and buckshot splintering outwards for maximum impact. Hordes of police responding to the first attack of its kind in the principality's history, that's Monaco, found Mr. Yermolayev covered in burns and bleeding profusely from shrapnel wounds around 9 p.m. He remained seriously injured. Okay, so he survived. Thank God. Witnesses told French media that the feet of a female victim, believed to be his wife, had been blown off and that she had been slumped over, covered in blood. And the couple's 13-year-old son was there also, so got injured. Hopefully everybody makes a speedy recovery and complete recovery here with this. And again, got some people very PO'd out there. So here we have the Great American State Fair is a sad state of affairs. Deflated visitors described the event on National Mall as unnecessarily vanilla and a disgrace. This is from the Telegraph.co.uk. Who knew that Kansas ranked 4th in the U.S. for sunflower production? Georgia has been number one for poultry farms since 1951, or that Montana's official state sport is rodeo. There are endless facts to be gleaned from 4 hours trudging around the great American state fair. Some of them are vaguely interesting. If this rolling event had been the dream of child of Alan Partridge, no one would say and raise an eyebrow. I don't know who that is, but this is Donald Trump's contribution. The result is achingly, numbingly dull. What's missing is all things Mr. Trump is known for. Pizzazz, glitz, showmanship. So what the great American public is being served up is one thing he doesn't have too much of. So much of. Facts. Endless facts. I tell you what, they could have called me up and I would have hosted this. We would have made this exciting. You know? You know how to get me, Mr. President. And, coming to think, right? And they're saying it was a dull. Okay, let me put it to you this way. Have any of you folks out there been to Washington, D.C. in June? It's not the most pleasant place there, right? Well, it could have been worse. They could have not cleaned up that big sewage spill on the Potomac earlier this year. But it's basically not that. New Jersey, they had to get they had some politicians had to go freelance because New Jersey wasn't sending anybody officially. But I don't know. Tame. Again, hotter than hell, humid as hell over there. We're going to be getting that this week over here in the New York and New Jersey area. Triple digits here. So, I don't know. I can't, I don't know what to say here. Okay. Here we go. This is from studyfinds.org from John Ander. All right. The pain of losing always outweighs the thrill of winning. A new study, in a nutshell, found that fear of loss and regret can drive decisions at the same time, but not separately as researchers typically assume. So in human organizational performance, what do we have out there? People are incentivized to work however they are, make decisions. Right? They could be verbal, nonverbal, but people are incentivized to do work in a certain way. So here we have another thing here. Fear of loss and regret can drive decisions at the same time, not separately, as researchers typically assume. Fear of loss was the stronger force. So that applies. We're not in safety. What is it here? Right? Let me finish the statement here. Fear of loss is the stronger force, but regret became a measurable factor once participants could see what they missed. So fear of loss. Right? What are you afraid of at work? Losing the job, losing favor with your boss, losing money. Those are, right? Those are going to be a stronger force than completing the job successfully. Right? So how much information people had about outcomes changed their behavior, suggesting context matters as much as choice itself. Right? Gender differences appeared in the data, with women leaning toward regret aversion and men towards rejoicing, though these findings are now and should not be abroad, right? Properly. This is from the Journal of Risk and Uncertainty. Right? So, anyway, something to think about. Here we have exclusive. This is from the FP Financial, the Free Press. Exclusive. Story by Maya Salkin from yesterday. Exclusive. Iran plans to seize Protestant church. St. Peter Evangelical is the oldest Protestant church in Iran. Now the regime is threatening to take it over, warning its leaders who are no longer afraid of America. So I don't know what denomination this is. But for years, the Iranian regime held back from seizing Tehran's St. Peter Evangelical Church, the oldest Protestant church in Iran. The regime was afraid what America might do in retaliation. According to 3 Western Christian leaders with ties to Tehran's Christian community, as well as Sergei Benyamin, executive secretary of the Synod of the Evangelical Church of Iran in Diaspora, former pastor of St. Peter. That Pharisee source is now gone with Iranian officials doing this. So I wish... so last week the regime told the 20 families living there to get out. Again, they're, again, we're told this shit doesn't happen, right? Pope Leo faces first major crisis of papacy from rebel Catholic group. Pope Leo XIV has made a last-ditch appeal to a rebel group of traditional Catholics who plan to ordain bishops without his approval, saying they will be committing a sin of extreme gravity if they will proceed. Just over a year into his tenure, Leo is facing the first major challenge of his papacy from the Society of St. Pius X, a group that rejects reforms made by the Catholic Church in recent decades. We're talking mostly Vatican II, including allowing Mass to be celebrated in languages other than Latin, and is expected to ordain 4 bishops on Wednesday in its seminary in Econ, Switzerland. Now, I'm going to go on over, right? Not that I'm trying to pit the Lutherans and the Catholics here and everything else, but here we have a story today. So the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod that I'm a member of had an election for their leader. So this is a contrast here, right, with this. So here we have Leo is facing the first major challenge of his papacy from the Society of St. Pius X, a group that rejects reforms made by the Catholic Church, including Mass being celebrated in languages other than Latin. And an unrelated story is from President Harrison, who won the election in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. I've probably been to 60 countries around the world and worshipped with Lutherans in almost every one. However, I always know exactly what's going on in the service and can fully participate. Why? All follow the order of the liturgy. So, with that, right? I always know when confession and absolution is happening, when the creed is confessed, and when words of institution are being spoken, when the Lord's Prayer is prayed, and when the ironic blessing is given. That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be in the LCMS. Great freedom, but within anchors. Now, what I find, right, another little bit of history factoid here is that the Catholic Church, when they redid their Mass, consulted Lutherans here with that. So, I don't know. With that, we'll see. How, right? So let's give this a little bit more context here. I plead with you and ask with all my heart, please turn back. I pray for you because the tear seamless garment of Christ is a sin of extreme gravity. May the Lord enlighten your consciences and awaken your hearts. In Catholic teaching, the link or communion between bishops and the Pope is a cornerstone in the Church's unity. Since his election, Pope Leo has made fostering Church unity a focus, but the Society's decision to proceed with the consecration of bishops without the pontiff's consent will be viewed as a serious violation of Church law. Now, I don't really review these articles before I read them. So, we just quoted President Harrison, right? Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod. This group of breakaway Catholics has an active presence in the United States with a headquarters in Missouri. The seminary for training priests in Dillwyn, Virginia. One of the bishops set to be ordained on Wednesday is Father Michael Goldade, who leads the seminary. It was founded in Switzerland in 1970. I tell you what, with the, right, so Pope Leo has been called by many being liberal. I'm not going to say yes or no. That's not what my job is, but let me point out something to you. So he's from Chicago, right? He wears the Chicago. I think Chicago came out with a stylized Pope baseball jersey, right? Baseball jersey like I'm wearing, except it was like with a Vatican flair on there for the Chicago White Sox. Any idea what other Lutheran church body is stationed in Chicago? Come on, everybody. Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, probably one of the more liberal church bodies out there with that. So I find it funny that these people that are Lutheran historically has been not with the Catholic, putting it mildly, and you have this other group, SSPX, against the Pope in Missouri, and then you have the most liberal people out there, and Leo's been called a liberal, and the ELCA in Chicago. Birds of a feather flock together, as my dad always used to say. And you know what? We're going to do an hour 2 here, and because we got a lot of stories, a lot of interesting things here. So we're going to cut this loose. This is the end on the Safety FM network. We're going to pick it up on our other platforms and podcasts after this.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.